Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Eero Teerikorpi. I'm the founder and CEO of Continuum, and welcome to our Continuent Tungsten use case webinar series. This is the first one out of 9 that we will going to have. And this particular webinar, we are going to discuss about the small cloud call center startup that ultimately became a part of the big telecommunication entity. You may or may not know what and who Continuum is. We've been around since 2004 in a MySQL marketplace, and we are the MySQL availability company. Anything and everything we do relates to continuous operation of business critical MySQL applications. Obviously, there's some more into that, but that's the core. A couple of words of myself before we get started. So, how do I qualify to talk about MySQL, MySQL Marketplace, MySQL solutions? I've been around as well, so basically day one from when MySQL became a significant player as a part of the LAMP stack. I'm a 7-time serial entrepreneur, so growing in the business is something what I do and know. One can consider me as a father of Continuent Tungsten, being a founder of the company, but also there is a backstory, and I could be called godfather of Kalera. You may know that also as an XTP cluster. Kalera is effectively similar solution that Continuum's first solution, M cluster, was back in 2004. We started as a MySQL clustering company, building solution for business critical MySQL applications to provide continuous operation. But we felt early on that the synchronous replication may not take ourselves as far as we should and could do and could go. The team that used to work for me decided otherwise, and they spun off and built the Kalera, which is a pretty darn good solution, what it is for the local availability. We naturally believe that we have a better solution as a whole. As you see from my picture, I am also a sailor, and actually also a Navy officer, Finnish Navy. I'm a native Finn, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, actually past 30 years or so. And how does Continuum fit in this big picture? We've been around since early days of open source and since the rise in the current power, but also we were part of the early days of cloud computing. So this is the 2 core components that our technology and solutions are built on. And so effectively geographically scaling MySQL database services, running both on-premise in the virtual environments and in the cloud. We wanted to build a platform agnostic solution, highly available, globally scaling, cluster database. Those are some of the key words. This is about being able to provide a really serious data service backend using MySQL or MariaDB to that extent as a backend. Continuum is not the biggest company of the marketplace. It will never be. But our aim is to be the best at what we do. And that's always has remained our goal and will remain our goal. A couple of highlights. Again, yes, this was about the continuous operation for business critical MySQL application. It has this geographically distributed mindset and being able to run any environment of your choice. Our customers tend to be pretty significant players. 70% of them are software as a service providers. We have a host of e-commerce, financial services, gaming, and telecommunication companies. Everyone of these are relying on MySQL to run their business critical application, and we are effectively and cost effectively to say safeguarding billions of dollars of annual revenue for these companies. And we like to believe that we are the best MySQL support services entity. No, we are not a remote DBA house, but we have a really in-depth knowledge on MySQL data replication, connectivity, and clustering. And all of our experts have 20+ year experience in this field. We do also believe really fast response times, best of the industry, I would think. During the past 2 years, the average response time across all of our customers on urgent support tickets has been less than 3 minutes. When you are running a application that effectively writes significant revenue, you want us to be there to help you when and if anything happens. And obviously we will be available to help you before anything happens, preventing any possible disaster. As stated, the solution is proven. We've been around. We have our customers who have been us with over 10 years. An average lifespan of current customers is over 7 years already, and we are adding new customers at steady speed. You may recognize a few names on the list, like Adobe, e-signature service, Adobe Sign, completely writes on Tungsten clusters. Marketo, another Adobe company, has been with us since 2009 and grown from a small startup into large marketing analytics entity. Other well-known companies you may recognize: Carmin, Riot Games, Vmware, Vonage, which is the subject of today's talk. And just a quick recap, why do many of our customers choose Continuum? It is about the satisfaction of our excellent solution backed with the even better support. And we see this with the significant reliance on our solution and customers renewing at really high rate subscriptions, and many actually signing up with the multi-year deals with us. Today's use case is about NewVoiceMedia. NewVoiceMedia is current day is part of the Vonage, and it was a small startup when we started, and now over the years it's grown and is even bigger as a part of Vonage. NewVoiceMedia became a customer 2013. Initially it was relatively small startup. It was well below 10 million revenue when we started engagement. We actually started discussion in 2011, and through the steps that we qualified ourselves as the best solution, best of the breed solution for NewVoiceMedia, and they've been trusting us ever since. NewVoiceMedia has raised over the years 140 million in VC revenue, and then in 2018 got acquired with the respectable $350 million price tag by Vonage, and currently running a significant revenue stream for Vonage. NewVoiceMedia's challenge, as any software as a service, and this NewVoiceMedia effectively is a cloud call center and focusing mainly on the Salesforce customer base, how to guarantee availability of their basically something that requires the 24/7, 365 without any downtime, even during the maintenance cycles service for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. Secondary challenge, obviously, with any of these software service companies is that how to scale the solution as your user base grows. And then performance, this scalability and performance tends to be two sides of the same coin. And you want to be able to isolate and have a high enough primary database, managing all the updates, and then you want to distribute the reads geographically, so that closer to the user, so that then you have a high performance backend with the affinity base that the reads closer to the actual user. And then by doing this kind of a scaling solution and effectively geographically distributed scaling, you can achieve this. And last but not least is the cost, that any small company, and even if they grow larger, cost will always be a significant consideration on data services. NewVoiceMedia challenge availability. So how did we achieve this? So that the NewVoiceMedia was using MySQL as a database backend, and they did use the traditional replication solution from primary to the replicas, but that wasn't quite adequate. It was lacking elements, being able to automatically fail over, being able to do zero downtime upgrades and such. And the solution for this is a Tungsten cluster. Tungsten cluster consists of 3 key components. Obviously, there's a Tungsten replicator, which is the underlying technology providing and ensuring that all the databases in the cluster will be up to date any given moment. Secondary part of the system is Tungsten Manager, which effectively manages the solution and recognizes potential failure on the primary and executes the reorganization of the cluster database and promoting one of the replicas as a new primary. And the last part of it is the Tungsten connector. We can discuss a little bit more about that, but that's really the key ingredient, secret sauce for keeping everything together. In NewVoiceMedia case, they chose not to have just one cluster, but 2 clusters, and these are both active clusters. So they provide both services on the different user base, but they are there available to fail over if one or the other data center would go down. So then this will take place at the Tungsten connector level. This is effectively a belt and suspenders approach, having 2 primary clusters and both active, and it also gives a higher performance characteristics. Proxy, Tungsten connector. Tungsten connector is really an intelligent proxy. It's a traffic cop that manages the traffic between application and the data service backend. A Tungsten connector is not only locally aware, it's globally aware. So these multiple connectors communicate with each other and they guide traffic accordingly. Also, Tungsten connector sees and knows the underlying data service, which one is the primary and which one is replicated. So it can basically effectively route the requests accordingly in the correct place. And when and if there is a failure event, Tungsten connector together with Tungsten manager are coordinating in such way that from an application perspective, it's seamless failover, and the application will not get disconnected at any point in this operation, just the sub-second operation, and when the primary has been replaced with the replica and are promoted as a new primary, and the operation continues. So all these together, Tungsten cluster is really seamless solution, and you can do this also for the maintenance manually, so that when you can do the zero downtime upgrade operations for the whole setup. And there is also, because the connectors are globally aware, we can do site level failovers. That process is automated. It's effectively single command, but we don't want to execute that automatically because there may be some flapping issues on the network connectivity, and there is no real issue with underlying clusters, but it may be just the network connection issues. And that's why somebody, a human, needs to step in and take a look and conclude whether the failover site level is needed or not. Sorry. The second challenge, obviously, is the scalability and performance. As discussed, NewVoiceMedia approach in such matter that they created 2 clusters, effectively a cluster of clusters. We call it composite cluster, servicing specific geographic area. And then by adding these clusters in one set in US West, US East, another set in Europe, effectively one in UK, one in Germany, and third set in Asia Pacific, effectively one in Singapore and one in Australia. Sydney, you can get geographic reach so that you have basically a higher performance and a scaled solution for local audience. In this case, NewVoiceMedia did not need to connect these separate clusters with each other. So this is basically one cluster servicing US and other Europe and Asia Pacific. We have customers who have a fully globally connected solutions, and we will discuss them in upcoming webinars. For example, Riot Games has built a data service backend for its account, gaming account management that has a single primary and multiple secondary sites. But in this case, we have effectively 3-site active solution providing global scalability. This is how our customers are managing, called Tungsten Dashboard. So we have a graphical user interface that they've been able to see the details on each cluster and cluster node and do effectively many of the DP8 style operations needed. This is the local view for in this case, the 2 clusters in the US. And then there's would be a global view for the 3 clusters, each consisting of 2 separate clusters. Altogether, some 18 database nodes in this system. Let's take a look how this looks in real world. We have a active cluster running. This is in AWS. This is effectively a replica of what NewVoiceMedia has, but obviously we are not accessing their production system. We built this type of a solution in order to better provide support services to our customers. And in this case, if we open and we see that currently we have a Asia Pacific Northeast cluster. It's a DP3 is the primary database, and we have 2 replicas. Simple operation, for example, that if you want to promote database 1 as a new primary, we can pick and choose. And this is pretty significant operation that Tungsten Manager is processing on the back end, effectively reorganizing the cluster. But not only that, because we have a secondary cluster here, it is also reorganizing the connectivity between these 2 clusters. It takes for a while. Looks like I have my refresh off, and we can see how this process goes on. Beside the single composite cluster view, we can look at the specifically either success that now we have promoted the database 1 as a new primary, and while this was taking place, the application wouldn't have noticed any difference, so it continued the operation. And I was talking about the cluster management. We can see all the clusters. We can use the specific region, and we go on a cluster level, and we can go in the database level. So that's really easy to operate. Let's see what happens at if you were to close down one of this is the wrong one here. Close down one of the database instances. This is effectively demonstrating what happens if database fails. And go here. Let's stop MySQL services on DP1 and see what happens. And as you see, DP1 failed, and this will create an automatic operation once again, where DP3 was within a few seconds promoted as a new primary. It connected DP2 replica, and it shows that the DP1 is out of the game. And we see different type of error levels here, so that this one cluster is completely active. The second cluster has an error status, but the composite cluster as a whole is ready and up and go and servicing the customers. So this one database is out of picture. Obviously, we need to take a look what happened with that. But if we conclude that was just the fluke and we can bring it back, there's a simple command recovery that allows us to reintroduce this database node back in the cluster and then once again provide more services. Obviously, if there's a more significant event, the hardware failure other, then we actually have to deploy another node and use a backup before we can reintroduce that impact in the cluster. So let's go back to the presentation. This is how we manage effectively online, easily, these Tungsten clusters. The last cost challenge for NewVoiceMedia obviously was the cost and continues to be the cost. And while we are a commercial software provider in the open source realm, we try to make sure that our pricing aligns well with the open source minded customers. And that's why and also keep in mind our annual subscription does not only include the software, but also 24/7 support services. So when there is an initial few clusters, the baseline price jump is reasonable. And then as our customers keep growing their system, we have customers with hundreds of MySQL instances clustered, and actually one case is in thousands of so that we make sure that no matter how many they have, ultimately the pricing per node remains reasonable. And we value obviously the volume, we value long-term relationship and loyalty in our technology, and those who are willing to make the commitment for multiple years gets an extra benefit in pricing. The other thing is that it is about honor system. We trust our customers. There are no license keys with our software. We basically built a setup that allows people to keep using our software with no concern about that somehow we would be interfering with our licensing schemes on that. One of the unique elements in our pricing also is that when we agree, whether it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, even 5 year agreements as we have, is true up policy. It's effectively almost like an unlimited license. We agree that whatever the fixed annual fee is to use the software and get the 24/7 support services, and during this subscription period, customers may add additional licenses without any cost at all. We'll just at the end of the whatever agreed subscription period we have, we reset the price if needed going forward, never retroactively. Once again, providing a cost-effective solution without any surprises. As a recap, it is about availability. That's the first and foremost service what Continuum offers, but it's also scalability and performance is concerned. Cost. We like to believe that our solution is cost-effective solution, and actually in many cases less expensive than potentially a free open source solutions supported by the relatively expensive remote DBA consulting entities. So you have to kind of think about those, or if you end up choosing solutions and yourself and building themselves, there is a human cost that you have to cover in your own company as well. So nothing is ultimately free, not even open source. Last but not least, is definitely about the customer service. Our customers may come to us with the software capability, but significant majority stays with us because of the way we end up supporting them and helping them over the course of the relationship. The products Continuum has threefold. Tungsten clustering. This is effectively what NewVoiceMedia is using. They do have some Tungsten replicator feeding in the reporting and analytics as well. So Tungsten clustering provides high availability, PR, geoscale, Tungsten replicator. It is core component of the Tungsten clustering, but it's also independent product, providing a real-time feed from homogeneously from MySQL to MySQL, but also heterogeneously to various targets. Tungsten Dashboard is the last one of the solution. This is an example of the geographically distributed solution, active across the 3 continents and 4 data centers. Recap: continuous operation, 0 downtime maintenance, geo-distributed MySQL clusters, and being able to run anywhere. Those are the key elements. Replicator: you have a source, MySQL, MariaDB, could be Aurora, RDS MySQL Cloud, Google Cloud SQL, Azure, any MySQL variant, feeding into, and it can feed into Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, then it can feed into various analytics like Amazon, Redshift, Vertica, Hadoop, messaging paths like Kafka. And we have all kind of topologies that you can build this solution. Tungsten Replicator, as well as Tungsten Clustering, both are available as an AMI through Amazon Marketplace. And so that if you want to kind of kick tires, you can go there and effectively start using it without delay. And Tungsten Dashboard, this is actually a free solution. It's just we want to keep it separate, providing interface, but any of our customers who want to have, instead of using command line interface, with many DBAs prefer, there is also ability to use the graphical user interface. And just to summarize, a lot of these issues we have already discussed during this webinar. Industry best 24 support services, that's the only level that we offer. We want to be available, and we actually are available. And with our customers, uptime can be measured in months and years instead of days and weeks. Cost saving, we do actually believe that our solution, even if it's a commercial software, it's more cost effective than most of open source alternatives available. We are happy to make the comparisons, and we are most definitely less expensive solutions than, for example, Amazon database as a service solutions, which ultimately will need some support services as well. It is about continuous operation. It is about guaranteeing 0 downtime for the business critical applications, and whether this was a disaster event or whether that's a maintenance event, either way, operations needs to continue. We can scale. We can scale within local database cluster. We can scale geographically. We can build these clusters in active mode. We can build them in active passive mode. So it's highly flexible depending on application needs and requirements. When you have a more updates, you may want to consider active model and then bring the primary servers close to the users. When you have a more of a read heavy applications, you most likely consider active passive mode when you have a single primary cluster somewhere in the world, and then you just bring closer the read traffic for the local users. And being able to run in different clouds is a significant benefit. You may start from the on-premises. We can build the solution hybrid cloud where we connect your existing on-premises deployment in the cloud that allows you to migrate in the cloud without downtime, or you can keep it going. And then the fact that you can go from cloud to cloud also allows you to provide a credible threat to your cloud vendor and have actually some power to negotiate your compute instance pricing with your cloud provider. That's a pretty significant feature as its own. And then intelligent proxy, we discussed about that already, but it's something that keeps and brings everything together. It manages the traffic on its way. It scales the reads with the load balancer, built-in load balancer, and basically it allows you to build a data service backend without making any application changes. And this built in with the MySQL, advanced MySQL replication, Tungsten Replicator, besides this has been a powerful replication engine, it has a really powerful filtering and transformation capability. And this comes handy when you want to not only replicate from MySQL to MySQL, but when you want to replicate to in the different targets. If it's analytics, you may want to replicate anything and everything, but you can also drop information you can transfer on the fly. For example, if you were to replicate from MySQL into Oracle, you need to change the data types, date and time stamps, and a host of variable things that and all that can be done on the fly. And one key element to keep in mind. This is about MySQL. This is not a MySQL compatible solution. We rely on underlying MySQL version, whichever you want. It's not only MySQL, it's the MySQL versions, MariaDB, all versions per Kona server, and any MySQL version that provides us to binlog. So you can pick and choose the backend underlying database, and which is fully grown, fully supported MySQL database. And obviously, by doing this, by interfacing and providing a front end through the proxy, there's no application changes needed when deploying Tungsten clusters. Quick summary and recap. Continuum. It is about availability. We've been around. We focus on online commerce application, which require 24/7, 365 availability. Our focus is in business critical MySQL apps. This meaning that your business is effectively riding on that app, whether that's a software as a service or e-commerce, but there's a significant revenue attached to the application. We have a number of startups as a customers, to large enterprises, and for the startups we have a special pricing. We are a small company ourselves, and we understand that there needs to be a kind of ability to kind of get it started at even lower cost, and we can work with you on that. As a little side note, which you may have seen, or maybe not, since beginning we focused on MySQL Marketplace. Back in 2014, Vmware acquired Continuum. Vmware at the time was building its own cloud offering, vCloud Air, and it looked around on the MySQL Marketplace, on database marketplace as a whole entity that could help them to build a database as a service solution for their cloud offering. And we were pretty happy that Continuum was the one that they qualified as the best technology and best team to do that. Unfortunately, maybe it was fortunately for the VMware, they decided the different strategy. Instead of building a competing solution to AWS and Azure and Google, VMware decided that they were better off providing value-added layer on top of the existing cloud vendors. And as such, Continuum solutions were no longer needed within VMware realm, and we spun off Continuum, the new entity, and we've been continue building our solutions and growing our business ever since. And future, we are already significant majority of our deployments are in the cloud. These are more traditional deployments, but then we realized that we need to even further automate the deployment process and management process, monitoring process, and support process. And we are in a process of building and releasing Tungsten Cloud anytime soon. So, thank you everybody paying attention to today's webinar. There will be a host of other Tungsten use case webinars coming in coming weeks. Please check out on our website for these webinars. And we are looking forward to talking with you on your business critical MySQL needs, should you have those currently or coming up in the future. Thank you. Smooth sailing. Bye now.